everyone, and welcome to Channel World Seed. My name is Francine Sayok with the International Seed Federation, and we are coming to you live from the WIPO studio in Geneva. I'd like to give a warm welcome to our panelists and speakers, and to our viewers watching this live stream. Allow me first of all to put this webinar in context. Happening right now in Egypt is the 27th session of the Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, also known as COP27, where 198 countries are coming together to steer the course of climate action today and in the future. This webinar also comes on the heels of the 3-day seminar organized by UPOV on the role of plant breeding and variety protection in enabling agriculture to mitigate to and adapt to the impact of climate change. So the themes of climate change and agriculture, we know, are inseparable. And truly, we are in a race against time to climate-proof our food production systems. So in this webinar, we want to give our panelists the opportunity to reflect and to follow up on the conclusions of the UPOV seminar on the role of plant breeding and variety protection in bolstering the ability of our agriculture systems to deal with climate change. What does this mean for the breeding sector and for agriculture in general? How do we take it forward? So without further ado, please let me introduce to you our panel. We have today in the studio Mr. Marien Valstar, former president of the UPOV Council, who is also senior policy officer for seeds and plant propagation material in the Dutch Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality. Welcome, Marien.
Thank you.
We also have, of course, with us Peter Button, Vice Secretary General of UPOV. Thank you, Peter, for lending us the studio of WIPO.
Thank you, Francine. It's our pleasure.
And last but definitely not the least, Michael Keller, ISF Secretary General.
Thanks so much, Francine, and thanks, Peter, that we can be here in the UPOV office.
So give us, Michael, some introduction on the UPOV ISF connection and also WFO. We were supposed to be joined, I understand, by WFO today as well.
Thanks so much, Francine. That's a big one. First of all, I would like really here to thank UPOV that they took a clear stand to bring climate change on the agenda also in the discussions we had recently here in UPOV. I think I would like to, first of all, to apologize our colleagues from the World Farmers Organization who are really engaged. And I think that's the most important one. They are on the ground in Egypt today with a big delegation. The whole leadership in the diversity of the Farmers Organization is in Egypt to participate in an engaged way at the COP27. And you mentioned COP27, and I think we should put this discussion here also into the frame of COP27, because also for the first time, food and food production has a place in the debates there. There will be one full day about food production. And I'm very pleased also here because the International Seed Federation presenting a huge diversity of actors in breeding, production and trading, over 7,500 companies spread out throughout the world, is looking to be part of all the debates. We were last week with a big delegation at the FAO. We are here, we were 2 weeks ago at UPOV, and we will go also to COP27 for the first time, also as International Seed Federation. We try to be part of the debate. I think today, the important one for us, we could speak again about all the challenges. We know the challenges. That means we have weather impacts every day. That means 3 times higher extreme weathers today than before the impact. We have 8 years in a row, the warmest years. This is showing all. We have 25% pest increases in general. That means here we are speaking about impact on crop. We are speaking about impact on crop production. And here we need also to speak about, when you look 5th year in a row, you have a really issue with rain in the Horn of Africa. We are speaking on impact and the livelihood of smallholder farmers. And I think all of us, we have a responsibility to think how to move forward and how to increase also the capacity of the private sector with their breeding programs on the ground to support directly smallholder farmers.
Thank you, Michael. And I want to continue along this line of the urgency of the challenges that is before us and the need for agriculture and climate change debates to be so interconnected, which makes the recently concluded UPOV seminar even more relevant today. I'd like to begin by asking Marien, what were your overall impressions of the 3-day meeting and how satisfied were you with the outcomes of the discussions?
Thank you, Francine. Well, there were surprises and also non-surprises, but even that's important because the seminar highlighted what we already know for a long time, that climate change is real and it is impacting agriculture everywhere in the world. And the impacts can be so various, both in biotic stresses and abiotic stresses. So, yes, impacts. Surprised I was by some of the lectures on the impact even in, let's say, well-to-do countries. A country like Norway is also struggling with the effects of climate change. While you would think, well, they'll have a longer growing season, it can only be a positive thing for their production. But also there they are worried about not having the right varieties for this changing environment. And I think that goes for all kinds of farmers everywhere in the world. So that was very interesting to learn about that. That was a real surprise for me that even in the developed world we are struggling. And then you ask whether I'm satisfied with the outcomes. Well, it really highlighted the need for a good system that incentivizes plant breeders to come up with innovations, to come up with new varieties. So, and that's something that's deep in my heart for a long time already. So I'm really satisfied with the outcome.
Thank you, Marien. Over to you, Peter. I want to ask a similar question. How would you compare the outcomes of the meeting, which you set forth at the, with the objectives that you set forth at the beginning? How do you feel they've been achieved?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it was important for us because last year we held a seminar to look at how plant variety protection was supporting policies in agriculture in general. And it came through loud and clear. There's one policy that is forefront in people's minds at the moment, which is climate change. And it was decided we needed to have a seminar on that to look at how important plant breeding and therefore plant variety protection is in responding to that. And I must say, thanks to the incredible array of speakers covering different topics and from different parts of the world, I think we had a great seminar over 3 days, really covering a range of issues. I think what struck out for me was the fact that there is an enormous challenge all around the world and all crops. Everyone is affected. At the same time, what I think was very encouraging is the fact that there is an enormous range of responses underway in terms of plant breeding, but also plant science. But looking at all different aspects, which was really something of a revelation to me. Of course, we know that increasing yield is one of the important aspects of responding to climate change to increase food productivity. But looking at how to modify the rice crop so that it can be grown in more ecologically friendly ways, looking at the science of the details, physical aspects of the plant, such as the length of the coleoptiles so that you can plant the crop more deeply and access the moisture. So a whole range of aspects, right through to the science of photosynthetic pathways. But at the other end, how plant breeding is really responding to ensure that the crops that are produced are the right ones, they meet the needs, for example, in relation to hydroponics, which is one of the areas that will need to be worked on. And finally, reducing food waste. We had some great examples of how plant breeding can help farmers to reduce waste, such as, for example, in lettuce, not pinking so early. So an enormous range of challenges, but also an enormous range of work that is being done to address those challenges. So all in all, I think a very positive outcome and encouraging.
Thank you, Peter. Indeed, there were so many relevant and specific solutions that were presented during the thematic sessions. And now I want to shift to a more specific topic, seeds. Michael, in your presentation in the first thematic session, you mentioned that there's no one-size-fits-all solution. What did you mean exactly by this?
Thanks so much, Francine. And I think when we are speaking about no one-size-fits-all solution, it's always what we are saying. A seed needs to be locally adapted. And Peter mentioned that a lot of issues smallholder or the farmers in general are facing everywhere. And I need to insist on this one. Seed is not a commodity you are moving around. Seeds has to be worked also in the fields. And this is also where I would like to highlight here, and the importance also of the presence of the World Farmers Organization, is this day in, day out relationship you have between seed companies and the farmers. And let me say one thing, because we speak a lot about challenges, we need to be optimistic. Mm-hmm. And I would like to be optimistic because optimism is also a driver for action. And we know we have to drive action. Mm-hmm. And I would like to take here the stand. We have no one-size-all solution, but there's only solution through science and innovation. And I think what we need to think about is also from where we come. We had the Green Revolution with Warlock. We had an incredible increase of yields in different crops, different staple crops. And I think this is also, this showed us whenever we invested money, we got the innovation, we got the science, but we got also we increased our capacities to support farmers. So were there trade-offs? Perhaps. Therefore, today we need to think further. We need to think how we can again build this dynamics on science and innovation and investment. Because we are here also at UPOV, it is all also from our side about investments. And these are not short-term investments. We know what we have to tackle. We have to tackle increased disease resistance. We have to tackle increased pesticide resistance. We have to tackle all the issues related to drought, to heat, less water. And this means also we have to invest in breeding programs. Again, science and innovation are not the only solution, because whenever we bring also new varieties on the ground, on the market, it's also about agronomics. I think we should never forget the seed alone cannot do it, but it's an essential contributor. And therefore our call is, and I'm very happy 3 weeks ago when we had the FAO conference on science and innovation plus investment, these three things are recognized. And during our debates in UPOV, all were recognized. What we need therefore also as the private seed sector to have the right incentive. That means it's big investment, and we know that at the turnover level, the private sector in the diversity of crops is spending up to 20-25% even in reinvesting in breeding. And this is also a long-term process. That means we need a clear, coherent, consistent, predictable, enabling agricultural framework where we are also sure investments are coming, and then we can also go everywhere to bring the best solutions to the farmers. But we need incentives. And when we are saying incentives, and we are here at UPOV, we are clear about we need this plant variety protection. And this wherever we are going also on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Michael. Now, I want to go back into the thematic sessions. And first of all, I want to say, Peter, it was a very impressive program that UPOV put together, the range of speakers and presentations. It was fantastic. So kudos to the UPOV team that put this seminar together, and again, very timely seminar. In the second thematic session, we talked about strategies to address climate change in agriculture, and we heard from speakers from Europe, from Africa, from Latin America. I want to ask Marien, did you see a kind of red thread running through their recommendations?
Yes, thank you, Francine. And indeed, we had speakers from all over the world, every corner of the world. And like mentioned, all farmers everywhere are facing problems. So red threads. Well, one of them, Michael also mentioned them, the need for investment. Not only private companies, also public institutions and public investment is really needed. This enabling environment, so a good environment in which innovations can be brought to the market, is so important. It's also another red line, I think, is stability. So good legislation, but also long-term stability. That knowing what you can work for and knowing how to work in this environment. And my last point I took out of that session is, it was very clear to me, no country can do it alone. We need to work together, and especially by working together in a convention such as UPOV, you can much better, let's say, make use of innovations and improvements elsewhere. And I think that's also very important for the future.
I see indeed a lot of intersection between what Michael and Marien are saying. But Peter, I'd like to hear your perspective on this as well. How do you see the dots connecting when it comes to climate strategy in agriculture?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's exactly the point. And it was very clear from the seminar, so many different areas to address, and also so many areas that are being worked on in relation to climate change. And the role of the plant breeder is crucial in all of this, because the plant breeder has to deliver to the farmer a package of traits, not one trait that superimposes and solves all the solutions. It's extremely complex, and they have to anticipate what that package of traits needs to be. So enormously challenging. And otherwise, the farmer is not delivered with the variety that they need. And clearly, plant variety protection is based on the fact that it encourages breeders to work on plant breeding, but also at the same time ensures that they're working on delivering the package of traits that farmers need. Otherwise, they will not be successful. It's as simple as that. So I think it was clear that that was an underlying strategy. And it's been demonstrated. And I think John Derrera in his keynote speech was pointing out how incredibly successful plant breeding has been in the past. He was very optimistic about the future as well. But with the complexity now, ensuring that breeders have the incentives to put that together in the right package, driven by farmers, will be crucial. And I think we've got some clear evidence that plant variety protection works not just by encouraging the right varieties to be developed, but also putting in place the framework to deliver that to farmers, to ensure that there's an effective seed production system as well. We had this study in Vietnam to show what happened in Vietnam after 10 years of UPOV membership. It was very clear there are two things. First of all, the new varieties were good. They were producing more, and they were being grown by farmers. They're not just new varieties that sat on the shelf. They were producing more whilst inputs were being decreased. Incredibly impressive. But at the same time, this partially came about because the seed industry was restructured. The fact that there was the possibility to license the production of new varieties meant that people could invest in delivering high-quality seed to farmers as well. So really, to have a strategy that delivers these packages to farmers, the plant variety protection framework is really key for the investment and the structure of the seed industry.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for speaking to us on the role of plant breeders being central to delivering this package of solution and giving us examples of success in countries where plant variety protection is in place. In the third and the fourth session, the focus was on plant breeding for climate change adaptation and mitigation in agriculture. And it looked at various crop perspectives from cereals, from ornamentals, vegetables, and fruit. While in session 4, there were discussions on plant breeding programs and techniques. In the presentations, we heard the emphasis on plant breeding as key to adaptation and more efficient use of resources and preventing food loss. So Michael, I want to ask you, among these vast packages of solutions, what excites you the most about the many possibilities in plant breeding for climate change adaptation, and what would it take to make it happen?
okay, we need to, perhaps excitement is a nice word, let's say optimistic. What gives us somehow the feeling that we can look in an optimistic way in the future? When I'm saying optimistic way means at the same time, I think we know also the responsibility we have as private sector. And I would like to come back to a point from Marien, because we are the private sector. Yes, we have breeding programs. Yes, we are producing seeds. Yes, we are trading seeds and we are engaging with farmers. But the public sector also. And you have national public breeding programs. You have international public breeding programs like CGIAR. And I think our call, we wanted to use also this meeting as a call. We have to do more. And let's be clear, better also together. I think there are lots of important public breeding programs also out there in many countries. And I think sometimes it would be good that we can bridge better also the private sector to these breeding programs to bring the solutions to the farmers. We had these discussions also recently with CGIAR, because also we are working on a lot of crops. We are working on 70 crops, but there are many other crops. The private sector, we need to be frank, are not working. Why we are not working? Because also the enabling environment is not there. Or let's be frank, we are business people. We cannot hide this one. There's no market. That means that's also where we need to think in the future how we can bridge this. Why am I optimistic? Look, today you have yet, 200,000 varieties on the market globally. You bring every year, nearly 20,000 varieties on the market. And you have the examples when we have PVP systems like in Kenya, when we brought into the market where there is more and more also an issue with heat and drought, early varieties for corn. This is showing our capacity also to help the farmers and smallholder farmers on this. We have the examples when you have today inbreeding programs like rice, bigger, deeper roots. That means we can do it with less water. That means, and we have shown in these examples, use of 50% less water in times where we know there's a water issue. And at the same time, it's increased our capacity even to capture more carbon. This is things we are doing yet today. And what we would like to do this everywhere. And we know in many countries today, no plant variety protection or no seed systems or no vibrant seed sector who is able to bring this also to the market. There was a recent study in 2015 showing in countries where you have still relying over 90% on non-private sector seed supply. I think these are things we should discuss. That's not us who can drive this. When I'm looking further in the future, yes, and we had nice discussions and nice presentations also on genome editing, genome sequencing. Genome sequencing, essential tool also to understand all varieties on the market today. Genome editing, it's impressive to see. You have more or less in 40 different crops breeding programs. And that's not only the private sector. This is also the public sector. You have on banana, on cassava, on many, many different crops, you have breeding programs to address the whole challenges. And I think this is where we can certainly have an additional important tool for the future. And we are always saying genome editing is another tool, should be another tool in the toolbox. We need all the other breeding tools also. And we need to continue also to work with the germplasm we have. This is absolutely essential. We will not change the world only by using genome editing. I think here we need to be responsible, but it's opening us doors where we can quicker and in a more direct way address, for instance, diseases or resistance in the plant itself. And this is for me, which gives us somehow the optimism. But again, we are going in this direction, but what we need also is clear and consistent regulations. How also tools like genome editing are regulated throughout the world.
Thanks, Michael. I want to continue on this note of optimism, Marien, and ask you, because in your earlier statement, you said that both developed and developing countries have a similar need for innovation. So tell us from a crop perspective or from a breeding program and technique perspective, what are you optimistic about?
Well, I just wanted to underscore the optimism Michael has just shown, and that is by looking back. During the seminar, the EU presented what benefits plant breeding has brought to the EU and the European, the CPVR system has brought to the EU. And there is no single reason to not expect this delivery to continue, because we have these exciting new tools there. Of course, we need indeed to have good regulations in which we can work. Well, maybe there's something to be worked on still in the EU compared to the rest of the world. But also there I'm optimistic. I think more and more people are starting to recognize indeed how important agriculture is and how important plant breeding for agriculture is. It's very telling to me that finally agriculture is also an important issue at the COP27. It was always seen as a problem and etc. But now maybe it can be part of a solution.
Well said, Marien. Peter, do you share the optimism?
Yes, absolutely. And I particularly like to pick up on the point from Marien that I think we have so many countries with a proven track record, very many challenges of the past that there have been that plant breeders have always responded to. They developed new crops. They've adapted crops to grow in parts of the world that they didn't previously. It's a proven track record, and that's the best possible endorsement to have. Yes, for sure, the challenges are historically large with climate change on so many fronts. They are global challenges. They affect all crops. So there is an enormous demand on breeders to deliver for the future. But the track record is they do, if they're given the right incentives. I think that's absolutely clear. And as Michael says, if the incentives are there, plant breeders will develop the varieties that farmers need. If the incentives are not there, sadly, they don't have the resources they need to be able to do their work.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Indeed, the examples do speak for themselves. In the thematic session number 5 on the role of plant variety protection in sustaining innovation, we heard case studies from Canada, from Sub-Saharan Africa, Japan, Kenya, and EU. I want to go back to you, Peter. What does their experience tell you? What's working and what's not working? What can we learn?
Absolutely. Well, there's always something to learn, that's for sure. And plant variety protection is in essence a simple system, but nevertheless, there are always areas for us to pay attention to. Maybe starting with the European Union, I think the key message, as we've already mentioned, is the fact the European Union, it's shown over decades, plant variety protection works. It delivers what farmers want. Moving on to Canada, I think that was very interesting because it harks back to the point that Michael was making that plant breeding relies not just on the private sector, but also on the public sector. And Canada made an important point, how crucial plant variety protection has been for developing partnerships between the public sector and the private sector. Absolutely crucial, and I think difficult without plant variety protection. And Canada gave some great examples of that. Moving on to Ghana, well, Ghana is our most recent UPOV member, so it was fantastic to be able to see their presentation. They made it absolutely clear that when they looked at their strategy for addressing climate change, UPOV membership, plant variety protection was at the core of that. In order to be able to have climate-smart varieties, they realized they needed to be UPOV members. So I think that came through loud and clear. But Francine, you also mentioned that we have to look at the existing system. And I think Japan did that. I think Japan emphasized the 1991 Act is for them crucial, but nevertheless, there are some areas where they have looked at the national level to see how they can improve it to make the protection even more effective. And they also talked about the benefits of digitalization, because it's one thing developing new plant varieties. They need to be in the hands of farmers. That means seeking protection around the world. And in UPOV, we're working to develop digital approaches. Our EPV program will enable plant breeders to make their varieties more widely available more quickly. And then finally, to wrap up, of course, Kenya. And I think Kenya gave great examples of how plant variety protection has underpinned the development of, for example, climate-smart maize varieties. So I think across the world, different aspects, but all pointing to the key, which is having an effective system to reward the efforts of breeders that are able to put in the hands of farmers, all farmers, the varieties they need to respond to climate change.
Exactly. And in the end, that's what it's all about, isn't it? Michael, at the concluding session, you said that we need better public debates at the national level on plant variety protection. And again, I think this connects to what Peter said about the need of having effective systems to support all of this innovation. So why do you think so? Why is there a need for better public debates, Michael?
First of all, I would like to take a point Peter just mentioned. Farmers needs in their hand new varieties. And I would like to highlight here, because we apologize to World Farmers Organization is not here, but they made some months back a survey within their membership. And this was interesting. Can we say now it's the representative survey? You never know. However, what came out is that nearly 80% of all the farmers looked for climate smart varieties. That means looked for innovative varieties, and this throughout the world. And I think, therefore, what we need today, and we should not forget this, we speak about climate change, and at the same time, we know also we have increased hunger. We know the world is facing a lot. Again, I'm not here to remind all of us, but this is showing also we need to tackle this one. We need to have action. What means to have action is also really that on the ground in a collaborative effort between the authorities. And I would like also that more authorities sometimes are recognizing also what the private sector can contribute. I still had some discussions also recently in FAO where the private sector is seen still as something you cannot really trust them. They are not solution providers. They are just providers there to get the money out. And I think this we need to get it right. Because the seed sector, yes, we need incentives. But this is not all. Because when we have incentives, we are able to bring a solution to a farmer. And we bring a solution to a farmer means also we are incentivizing the work of the farmer. Because the farmer has more yield, or the farmer can address the different challenges, and the farmer is gaining also more money. That means what we are always saying, yes, we are business people, but this is about a win-win solution. And this is not about, because that's a point we had also, which was slightly discussed here at UPOV, and it was very deeply discussed last week also at FAO. We are looking for a sustainable solution. Sustainable in terms of environment, but also sustainable in terms of business. And I think the message we get also from the World Farmers Organization, that's also what they're looking for. And we are not looking for that we have countries like we have it sometimes, who in 35 years have emergency seeds. What means emergency seeds? That means every year there needs to be a supply of seed that farmer have something. Is this a sustainable solution? No. And that's where we need to sit down together. We need not short-term solution. We need the emergency actions. But we need also really now to think how together with the public authorities, with public breeding, we find mid-term, long-term solutions that we can structure seed supply and seed resilience in the countries. And I think that's what we are looking for. And for this, yes, we need an enabling business environment. Because again, it's also about investment, but it's not investment for investment. It's an investment to provide solution to the farmers.
Marien and Peter, I want to ask you the same question. How do you gauge the temperature in public debates around plant variety protection, and in which direction do you want it to go?
Well, to my pleasant surprise, I think this idea of what you would call sustainable intensification, that was around, let's say, 10, 15 years ago, but then it got more or less a negative image. I think it's coming up again, and I think it's very important to promote that idea. Because even if you look at, well, wherever you look, if we only get bigger yields by getting more land into production, there's still a big problem. I think we need to have more production on less land, and indeed with less pesticides and fertilizers. Well, that is the real thing that plant breeding can bring. Of course, it's not an easy thing. It's not like, let's do it, tomorrow we are there. That's why we need these long-term programs and these clear investment and clear regulation frames. But yes, plant breeding will deliver if that's the case. And like I said, we really need this sustainable intensification. Otherwise, we'll end up eventually still using up the Amazon forest, which we don't want to.
Peter.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's good to come back to your point, Michael, about the World Farmers Organization farmers. All of us are here to ensure that farmers can deal with these challenges. That's absolutely key. And we work very closely with the World Farmers Organization in the World Seed Partnership. And one of the phrases that I always like is they emphasize solutions should be farmer driven. And that's the whole basis of the UPOV system of plant variety protection, because the only people that decide whether plant breeders are paid are the farmers. Because if farmers don't grow a plant breeders' varieties, breeders have no income. And they have plenty of choices. They don't have to grow protected varieties. They always have the chance to grow varieties that are not protected, old varieties, ones that are not available. It's up to the farmer. The farmer decides ultimately. And I think this is one of the points that we need to emphasize in this public debate, so that it's not a question of making profit for profit's sake. No one makes a profit unless the farmers decide that it's in their interest, and the farmers will make a profit. Farmers need to be profitable because otherwise they won't be able to invest and improve agriculture, respond to climate change. It's a win-win all around.
Mm-hmm. So farmers as decision makers, and that they need seed choice to be able to make informed decisions on what they grow. We have time to hear some final statements from our speakers and maybe even try to relate it to the conversations that could be happening right now at COP27 in Egypt, where they're talking about policies and financing measures, sort of compelling the parties to walk the talk when it comes to climate commitments. When it comes to enabling plant breeding and science-based solutions to support agriculture in the face of climate change, what is the way forward, in your opinion?
Would you like I start or my?
Let's start with Marien.
All right. Well, the way forward is to recognize the role, the important role plant breeding can bring, and to recognize that you need to organize an environment in which this role can be played. And then, of course, it's about not only plant breeding, I think also international trade could be improved, making sure that phytosanitary rules are relevant, etc., etc. But recognizing this role and making sure this role can be played is a very important one. And that takes investment, and that takes investment not only in research, but maybe also in new regulations, especially in those countries that are not, for instance, a member of UPOV yet.
Peter.
Thank you. I think what came out very clearly in our seminar was that climate change poses a huge range of challenges around the world in all crops. It was very encouraging to see that plant breeders, scientists have a range of options to address those challenges, but they need the system to support that, to develop these new varieties. And I think the key is, as Marien has said, it's important to have the legal frameworks that encourage, incentivize plant breeding, that will develop the right varieties for the right farmers, for all farmers at the right time. So I'm very confident that we are on the right track, but we need to provide that support in order that we can meet the challenges ahead.
Thank you, Peter. Michael, what is the way forward in your opinion?
First of all, I think it's important that there's a recognition that seed is the starting point of food. That means when you discuss food systems, you need to include the discussion on seed systems and seed supply. You can have the best soil, the best fertilizer, the best production way, but if the seed is not right, the output and the harvest will not be right. And I think this is what is important for us, and this is where we would like also to engage further in the debate. The second point is about what we are looking for is to make seed choice that farmers have seed choice. And again, we are not saying here our improved varieties should be the only choice. No, the farmers should have the choice of land races, OPVs, or whatever you have, indigenous seeds. It's an important part also. But what we are looking for, that we are able to provide also a choice, and the choice should include improved varieties. And I think this is absolutely essential in a world where you have interdependency, also in seed supply. There's no country out there who is independent on seed supply. In a world we are facing more challenges, more and more. But in a world also we know the only solutions can come from the farmers when we speak about food systems, and even transforming food systems. I think the part of seed is an absolute essential driver in the discussion. That means we need to provide seed choice. We need to be able also, and I would like to emphasize it, to work more on some underutilized crops. Because we need to provide the full package to the farmers on the ground, that they are able to drive further the transformation on food systems. And therefore we are here, therefore we engage, but therefore also we are always saying what we would need to be able to offer this to all the farmers around the world.
Thank you, Michael. And thank you, Marien, Peter, and Michael for joining us in the studio today. And we are now ready to answer questions from our live audiences, who I'm sure have a lot of questions or comments or thoughts to share with the speakers. So please send us your questions on social media over at the chat, and our speakers will come back on live stream to answer them for you. Hello, everyone. We are live and switching over to the Q&A part of today's session. We are joined again by Marien, Peter, and Michael to answer your questions. And first, we want to acknowledge those who are joining us on social media. To all our followers who have watched the broadcast, we want to say hi to Marien, greeting us from Buenos Aires in Argentina. She says she's glad to have attended this virtual event on this very vital issue. We also want to say hi to Amin from Pakistan, who is requesting a translation to Urdu, and to Harish Kanari, who gives us a smiley emoji to say that he finds the discussions interesting, I think. I want to start by picking up a question from social media. Saeed Shah is asking, what kind of incentives do breeders expect? And perhaps this is a question for Peter or for Michael.
Peter, you would like to start?
Please, Peter.
Okay, thank you, Francine, and thank you for the question. Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's important. The incentives that plant breeders need are also the incentives that farmers and society need. I think what we need, what plant breeders need, is a system that rewards investment in plant breeding according to successive varieties. So if a breeder develops a successful new variety, meaning that a farmer grows that variety, they should be rewarded. And the more popular that variety is, the greater performance that it has for the farmer, that plant breeder should be rewarded accordingly. So that farmers benefiting means that plant breeders benefit, and we all benefit. That really is the key to the UPOV system. If the plant breeder doesn't produce a package of traits in the form of variety that the farmer needs, they will not get any return on their investment. Thank you.
Michael, would you like to add to this?
Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps what I would like to add is the idea also, what I would like to remind is some of the business and the seed sector, we are risk takers. Because when we start to work on a variety, this is sometimes 7, 8, 10, 15 years ahead before this variety is going to the market. That means here are investments. And what would you like to bring to the market is, like we showed the whole debate yet, is this choice for farmers. But at the end, yeah, it can be that the farmer is deciding, I'm not interested in this variety. I will take something else, which is more fitted to my needs. That means we need also to convince that our varieties, climate smart varieties, and all what we mentioned before is really also for the market responding to farmers. And therefore, for us, is as a risk taker, we would like also that the farmer then is buying this variety. And that's where we are looking for this choice. But at the same time, yes, we know there's a risk we are taking because we don't know if it's taken up. That means we are also having in mind the market, but market means really the local market, what is needed on the ground. And it can be we bring varieties on the market. After 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, nobody is any more interested in varieties, and then we have to switch. That means we need to have in mind there are big investments behind. For a variety, it can be several $100,000 or euros, and at the end, we are not sure if someone is taking up. And therefore, it is important that we have a system in place which allows us to bring this to the market, and that we can have a kind of return on investment.
Thanks. I want to switch over to a second question here. And I think what Michael and Peter were talking about is a good segue to this question. Siddharth is asking us, there is a need to pursue agroecology and food sovereignty for a climate resilient and for self-reliant communities. And he believes that promoting native land races is the natural choice. What can you say about this?
Would you like that I start?
Yes,
Or
Mike.
Marien, please start.
Maybe I should start. Yes, and good day, everybody. Yes, agroecology is part of a solution in my view, but not the solution. And especially if you look at, let's say, the rate of changes we see now with climate change, you could really wonder whether we are able as society or as farming communities to keep up with that rate of change. I think plant breeding is really necessary to keep up with those changes. And I think that was explained to us by all parts in the world, that especially plant breeding needs to bring solutions to cope and to adapt to climate change. Agroecology in itself is a great idea, but does it bring enough and quick enough innovations? That's the question. Over to you, Francine.
Thanks, Marien. And I think Maria Agnon agrees with you that all stakeholders must get involved. And she has a comment here and says that seed industry is part of these multiple actors trying to solve this global challenge, and that all of us must collaborate. And there is no single solution to this massive challenge. Well, the title of this webinar has the word urgency in it. And the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change basically said it's now or never, and that only with drastic measures could we keep global warming from spiraling out of control. And Marien, you made a point earlier that for the first time at COP, happening right now in Egypt, they're putting special focus on agriculture, not as a culprit, but as an enabler of solutions. Where do you think this realization is coming from? Of course, we welcome this very much.
Well, I think that, let's say, the first 20 or more COPs were about mitigation, about stopping carbon getting into the air, etc., about many plans and many agreements on how to stop climate change. But there is now also a realization that there is real climate change. It's happening. So you also have to talk about adaptation. Farmers, agriculture, of course, they know they always work in an environment, in a climate. Agriculture has always been depending on the climate and has always been able to adapt to a changing climate, at least if you look back the last few thousand years. But again, this rate of change is now so fast that I think the automatic idea agriculture will adapt to climate change, it will not be so automatic. We really need to focus and work hard to have agriculture adapt. And I think we are starting to realize that now. It's not business as usual. We have to really look at how adaptation can take place.
Thanks, Marien. And on that, on adaptation, we know, of course, the work that is going on plant breeding for varieties that can tolerate drought or flooding or can resist diseases and pest pressure. And a point was made earlier that these innovations will only make a difference if they can get in the hands of farmers. Does plant variety protection help this process along, and how? Maybe, Peter, this is for you.
Yes, thank you. And I think that's a great phrase, because one thing is for sure, you cannot force a farmer to grow a variety that is not in their interest to grow. It always has to be a decision of the farmer about whether that variety is going to perform well in their conditions, is going to produce a crop that will satisfy their needs. And the plant variety protection system has two key ingredients, I think, that are fundamentally important. First of all, it gives the incentive for plant breeders to develop varieties that farmers want. And as was mentioned in the discussion, this isn't so easy, because a plant variety is not one trait. It's not drought tolerance. It's not frost resistance. It's a whole package of traits that have to suit that farmer's needs. And if the package isn't right, the farmer won't grow it. And so what the plant variety protection system does, and the UPOV system, is to give incentive for varieties only if they get in the hands of farmers, because the income that plant breeders will get through that system is directly from the farmers paying for that seed. So that is a fundamentally important part. The other part is that the plant variety protection system also, by allowing plant breeders to control varieties, means that they can set up professional seed networks, that people can invest in good quality seed production. And then we've seen, this is one of the key benefits of UPOV membership, is that before, there can often be situations where there are varieties that don't have the right characteristics, they're not being grown by farmers, or the farmer's not able to get the right quality of seed because there's no professional seed industry. The plant variety protection system also enables licensing to take place, so that seed companies can invest in producing high quality seed, getting seed to the farmers when they need it. So both elements really key. Sounds very simple, but if you don't have plant variety protection, the problem is farmers don't get what they need in their hands at the right time.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for explaining to us the benefits of the UPOV system and how this ultimately benefits the farmers in the end. Michael, I want to ask you, because we've heard in many discussions that science often moves faster than the regulatory environment that supports it. And how can the PVP system support the changes in plant breeding as it becomes more efficient and as plant breeders gain more and more tools and techniques that help their work?
Yeah, thanks, Francine. First, I would like to go back also to what Marien mentioned, because that's about, we are speaking in the frame of COP. And today we really need to think about solutions. We need to think about adaptation and the whole COP. And therefore, it's so important for us to be also in the debate of the COP is really to think about what is our action plan. Let's transform food systems. But for this, we need also to have all innovative approaches in the agricultural production. And again, what we're always saying, there is not one single innovative approach. There are several, like agroecology. That means this climate smart innovations is absolutely critical for us. I think we can be very happy, and we mentioned yet before, we can be optimistic because science is also evolving and science is rapidly evolving. And in this evolving time, more and more, we need to be able also that science and research, and I'm speaking here on private and public research, is evolving. And yes, we have no new tools like genome editing, which allows us really to move quicker on diseases or pests to move ahead. This is essential. Now, what we need at the same time, as Peter very nicely described, is that we have a system in place is that when someone is investing several years into a new variety, that he get also somehow something back at the end. And therefore, I'm always saying for us, the breeders, the PVP system is the best system because it's a sui generis system, which is building the right proportionality between protecting also what we are doing, but at the same time allowing others to use what we brought also to the market. What better system you can have, and it's very unique worldwide, what better system can you have between access also for others, for farmers, for hobby gardeners, for seed companies, access all the varieties to use them in their breeding programs, and at the same time building a system of protection for those who invested money. I think this is the essential driver for us, and therefore we are so much linked to the PVP system. Do we need to think about a new PVT system? Today, I don't think so. We just need to take into account this long process into a new variety, and it's not just now gene editing is changing the whole system. This is the most important thing, because we need to think long-term investment also from small and mid-sized companies which are investing a lot of money. And therefore, let's work with the system we have today, which is the right one between access and use. And it's the right one also to build the competition on the ground for farmers to have the right choice.
Thanks, Michael. And again, to those who are following us on social media, please do send us your comments. We have time for a few more of them. But I want to ask this next question to Marien. What is the best way for countries to integrate plant breeding and plant variety protection into their climate strategies? What's the best place to start? What can they do tomorrow?
Nice question, Francine. Well, like we discussed in the seminar, climate change is affecting all farmers, all farming systems. So there's not a country in the world that should not be, let's say, analyzing their own situation. And I think whether you're a developed country or a lesser developed country, you need to analyze your situation and see what are the issues in your country, what you can do, what are short-term issues, what are long-term issues. And it's my view that you really have to think of how to create an environment in which improvements can take place, how to foster improvements, how to foster innovation. And then I think you need, well, UPOV membership, or having at least a law that promotes plant breeding is part of that answer. There's more elements to that answer than only UPOV membership. But of course, countries also need to think of what are we doing in research and development in our public institutions? Are we taking the best out of that? Are we making sure that their results reach farmers in the end? Or do we need private companies to take these results and bring them to the farmers? So there's many different questions that you can ask yourself, but countries need to really analyze. And maybe in this regard, I would like to point out at the UPOV website on this seminar, you can find a presentation by Ghana, which I think was very interesting and telling. Ghana did a very systematic analysis of what are possibilities for us to adapt to climate change. And well, a part of that analysis was okay, but we also need to promote innovation, make sure that innovation can take place. Hence, we are looking for UPOV membership. So those that are interested, I would say, go to the UPOV website, to the seminar, and see what Ghana has considered. Over to you, Francine.
Thank you, Marien. And I have time just for one more question, and I think Peter is the best person to answer this. And again, I think it ties in neatly with what Marien was talking about earlier. What would you like countries to understand about the UPOV system? What do they stand to gain by acceding to the UPOV convention, especially in the context of their broader national climate strategies? Why is this so important now?
Okay, thank you, Francine. I think, yeah, that's an important question. And maybe in a nutshell, what it does by introducing a law on PVP, it empowers every citizen in the country to think about becoming a plant breeder. Instead of deciding who should be plant breeders, it empowers anyone to develop new varieties and to be able to protect them. And the UPOV system means that by becoming a UPOV member, you'll make your country attractive to plant breeders around the world to bring their very best varieties for your farmers. And as Michael was saying, it's very important to understand that this is really an open source type system, unique system. And what it does is once farmers, people in this country have access to these wonderful new varieties, they can freely use them in their breeding programs to develop even better varieties. So it's a fantastically empowering system. And the great thing is, it will only reward those that do a great job in delivering what farmers want. So it's really nailed in success, win-win situation for farmers and also for breeders. And the point is it encourages all types of breeders, whether they be in the private sector, the public sector, and also encourages partnerships between those. We saw that in the seminar, for example, in relation to Canada, how important this was to bring them all together. And this is a huge change, a huge challenge we're facing with climate change. We need all partners acting together, government, academia, private sector. We need mechanisms that enable those people to work together, to incentivize them to work together. Plant variety protection, when you're talking about plant varieties, getting the right variety to farmers, it's a key component in that mix. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Well said. Again, it's a win-win situation for plant breeders and for farmers. And that's all the time we have today, unfortunately. Thank you to our speakers, Peter, Marien, and Michael, and also to the people on social media who followed us today. Thank you so much for listening to the discussions and giving your 2 cents as well on this very vital topic. So that's it. We want to thank you from Channel World Seed for following us today, and keep following us on social media. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more updates on the seed sector in general. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.